Joshua in chapter number 1, and we're going to start reading in verse number 1. And so, to give you a little context, this is whenever Moses has just passed away. He's just died in the past book, and now Joshua is taking over his position as the leader of the children of Israel. And this is God making His promise to Joshua that he needs to be strong and courageous, and God's going to be right there with him. And so let's start reading in verse number 1. It says, "Now after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spake unto Joshua the son of Nun, Moses' minister, saying, Moses my servant is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, thou and all this people, unto the land which I give to them, even to the children of Israel. Every place the sole of your foot shall tread upon, that I have given unto you, as I said unto Moses, from the wilderness and this Lebanon, even unto the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land, the Hittites, and unto the great sea, toward the going down of the sun, shall be your coast. There shall not be any man be able to stand before thee all the days of thy life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with thee. I will not fail thee nor forsake thee. Be strong and of a good courage, for unto this people shalt thou divide for an inheritance the land which I swear unto their fathers to give them. Only be thou strong and very courageous, that thou mayest observe to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded thee. Turn not from it to the right hand or to the left, that thou mayest prosper whithersoever thou goest. This book of the law shall not depart of thy mouth, out of thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate therein day and night, that thou mayest observe to do according to all that is written therein. For then thou shalt make thy way prosperous, and then thou shalt have good success. Have not I commanded thee? Be strong and of a good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee whithersoever thou goest." And so in this context, Joshua has been Moses, as it said he was Moses' minister. He has followed up in Moses' footsteps. He has spent time with Moses. He has battled with the children of Israel, and now he is taking Moses' place as the leader. He's taking Moses' place as the captain over Israel, and he is leading Israel into battle for the Canaan land. And in the later chapters, he's very successful. He doesn't lose any battles. He is strategically minded. He places ambushes, and the Lord's with him. He wins battles that he shouldn't be able to win statistically, and he wins battles that he is completely outnumbered in, but with the strength and the power of the Lord, he is able to take over Canaan with pretty much with ease. So I want to look at a few things about Joshua that we can apply to our lives. And I want to ask the question, what's stopping you from being like Joshua? What's stopping you from doing what you can for the Lord? What's stopping you from just going all in? That's what Joshua did. He put all his eggs in this basket. He banked everything he had on the fact that the Lord was going to come through and pursue through him. Even from a younger age, Moses was teaching him the Scriptures. Moses was teaching him what to do. Moses was trying to teach Joshua, because I believe that Moses had an idea that Joshua was going to take up after him. I believe that Moses had an idea that Joshua was going to be his successor as the captain of Israel. And so Joshua spent his time with Moses. Joshua spent his days learning from Moses and watching how Moses led the children of Israel. And he went into battle many times for Moses. And you remember the story of how it was Moses, and he was over the battle, and whenever his hands were raised, they won, and whenever his hands were down, they lost. Joshua was leading that battle. Joshua was the captain of the soldiers down there fighting with I think it was the Amalekites. And so Joshua has been in this thing for a little while, and he has been learning from Moses. And so first I want to ask, what could be stopping you? It could be pride. Pride could be stopping you from being what you are for the Lord. Pride could be the very reason that is, it could be the only thing that's stopping you from going all in for God. That could be the only reason that you're not where you should be with the Lord. It could be people. There could be people in your life that are hindering you from getting close to the Lord. There could be people in your life that are that you're thinking, oh, what are they going to think? Oh, they're my friend. I can't leave them behind. But I believe you should get rid of some people in your life. I believe that there's people that can hinder you far more than you can help them. You need to let go of some things in your life. And lastly, as a way of introduction, it could simply just be stupidity. If you look at the statistics of this thing, if you look at how this is going to happen, if you continue to live in the world, if you choose to go out in the world and give your all into the world and spend your time and spend your money in places and with people that you know you shouldn't be, you know where you're going to end up. You're going to end up down the road. Eventually, you ain't going to have no money. You're going to end up addicted to some things. You're going to end up in a horrible state of life. And your children's going to have to grow up in that mindset. Your children's going to have to grow up in that environment. And you've heard it from preacher after preacher that stands up and says it's not worth it. I've been in your place. I've been out in the world. Don't go that way. Don't do that. Don't look at that. Don't listen to this. Don't taste that. Don't drink that. You stand up and you listen to preacher after preacher tell you not to do something. And then just out of plain stupidity and plain ignorance, you go out in the world and you start tasting and you start looking and you start feeling a part of those things. And I see that you can miss out on what God has for your life. You can miss out on being the Christian that you need to be just because plain stupidity and ignorance. And so I want to look at Joshua, and I want to look at three characteristics of Joshua and how he was able to take this position, how he was able to step up to the plate and fulfill God's will for his life. How was he able to do that? First, I see that he was ready. And so in Exodus in chapter number 17, Exodus in chapter number 17, it says, hold on, let me find my place. But Exodus chapter number 17 and verse number 14, it says, "And the Lord said unto Moses, Write this for a memorial in a book, and rehearse it in the ears of Joshua, for I will utterly put out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven." And so Joshua was prepared one way by reading and listening to the book. He sat there and the Bible says that Moses rehearsed it in his ears. And another way that he prepared, not only was he reading this book and seeing what God wanted for his life and hearing what God wanted for his life, but he stuck with somebody that he knew was as close as they could be to God. He stuck with Moses because he knew that Moses was doing right. He knew that Moses was as close with God as he could be because Moses would have conversations with God. Moses would come down off of mountains, and because he felt such a presence of God and because he got so close to God, his face would be shining. Moses was as close to God as he could be, and because of that, Joshua said, I want what Moses has got. I want to be as close to God as I can, and so I'm going to stick with Moses. Because Moses is sticking with God, if I stick with Moses, I'll be closer to God. He used common sense, and if you stick with somebody that's close to God, you'll draw closer to God. If you buddy up with somebody that you know is close to God, that you know isn't going to falter, isn't going to fail, that you know isn't just going to turn down on you, that isn't just going to fall out of church real easy, then you will get closer to God. I love meeting new people in the church in the sense that if I find a friend, I know that I can be their friend because if they're close with God and I'm close with God, that brings us closer together. So it's a lot easier to make friends. It's a lot easier to stick close to somebody whenever you're already friends with the same person. So the closer you get to God, the closer you get to, the more you read your Bible, the more you study, the more you pray, the closer you'll get to the people around you. And here's another thing: if there's people around you that's faking in this thing, that's easily going to fall out one day, that they're not reading their Bible, they're not studying, they're not praying, they're not doing like they should be. If you end up getting closer to God and you don't see them, and they begin to, if you know that you're doing everything right, if you know that you're doing the best you can to get close to God, and they begin to get mad at you, and they begin to talk about you, and they begin to get angry with you, and your friendship begins to stray away, that tells you that they're not where they need to be with the Lord. That tells you that, but as long as you're doing the best you can to stick close to God, as long as they're not any sin in your life, as long as there's not anything wrong or blatant sin, it doesn't even have to be blatant sin, as long as it's not some sort of sin that you know you're doing in your life. If you can get rid of that, if you can be as close as you can to God, the people around you will start to show. The people around you, you can begin to watch, and you can look at what they do. You can look at how they act, and you can say, man, I bet they're close to God. Or you can say, man, they're just faking it. They're not here for God. They're not here for church. They're here for something else. So I see that he was ready. But next I see that he was ruthless. And flip over to Joshua in chapter number 11. Joshua was a leader of an army. He was the captain of the army. He was a ruthless warrior. Joshua was a very military. He had a very militaristic style about him. Joshua, he was a military leader. And so in Joshua chapter number 11, in verse number 16 it says, so Joshua took all that land, the hills and all the south country and all the land of Goshen and the valley and the plain and the mountain of Israel and the valley of the same, even from the mount of Halak and that goeth up to Seir, even unto Baalgad in the valley of Lebanon under Mount Hermon, and all their kings he took and smote them and slew them. Joshua made war a long time with those kings. There was not a city that made peace with the children of Israel, save the Hivites and the inhabitants of Gibeon. All other they took in battle. For it was of the Lord to harden their hearts, that they should come against Israel in battle, that he might destroy them utterly, and that they might have no favor, but that he might destroy them as the Lord commanded Moses. And at that time came Joshua to cut off the Anakims from the mountains, and from Hebron, and from Debir and Anab, and from all the mountains of Judah, and from all the mountains of Israel. Joshua destroyed them utterly with their cities. And there was none of the Anakims left in the hand of the children of Israel, only in Gaza and Gath and in Ashdod there remained. So Joshua took the whole land according to all that the Lord said unto Moses, and Joshua gave it for an inheritance unto Israel according to their division by their tribes, and the land rested from war. Joshua was very ruthless. He didn't hesitate to follow God's will. He didn't hesitate to cut off some things that needed to get out of the way of Israel. He didn't hesitate to take over countries. He didn't hesitate to kill the kings of Israel. There's a story in these chapters where they took over 3 different kings and their people, and they brought the kings out of the jail that they were holding them in, out of the cave, and they hung them up on a tree. They hanged them on a tree for all the people to see. Joshua was a very ruthless leader because he needed to be. He saw how Israel needed to be lifted up so that God would be lifted up. He saw how Israel needed to be ruthless. He saw how Israel needed to be mean and rough and coarse so that God's name could be lifted up, and he didn't hesitate. He didn't spare anybody that Moses didn't tell him to spare. He didn't spare anybody that God didn't tell him to. And he did what the Lord asked him. He was ruthless. It didn't matter what was in his way. It didn't matter who was in his way. He was going to do to the best of his ability to serve the Almighty God. And so that's what some of you need to be. If you truly want to follow the will of God, if you truly want to give all you can to God, if you want to be the best you can, you're going to have to be ruthless. You're going to have to kill some things in your life. You're going to have to take over some things in your life. You're going to have to conquer some different things in your life, and it's going to hurt your flesh. It's going to kill your flesh to get rid of some things, to get rid of some, they don't even have to be bad things. It could be simple as your phone. It could be a video game. It could be something, maybe it could be sin, something that you shouldn't be doing, some people that you shouldn't be hanging around, some people that you know aren't saved, and the people that you indulge in things with that you shouldn't indulge in. You're going to have to be ruthless. You're going to have to do what the Lord said. You're going to have to take up your cross, and you're going to have to bear it daily. You're going to have to get rid of some things in your life if you want to get close to the Lord. Joshua was ruthless because he needed to be. You're going to have to be ruthless if you truly want to get closer to God. You're going to have to kill some things. You're going to have to get rid of some things. You're going to have to take some things captive. You're going to have to think about it and say, why am I doing this so much? Why am I spending so much time on my phone? Why am I spending so much time playing games whenever I could be studying? I could be praying about this matter over here. I could be praying about my families. They could get healed. They could my family could come back together. Something great could happen in my life if I would spend more time praying instead of being on my phone, instead of playing games, instead of doing something useless with my time, instead of doing something with my time that's going to amount to nothing whenever heaven comes. I could spend my time praying. I could spend my time reading. I could spend my time out preaching on the streets. I could spend my time witnessing to people in the grocery store, at a restaurant. Just a little tract handout can change more than you know. And so by giving your life to God, you're going to have to cut some things out. You're going to have to kill some different things. You're going to have to be ruthless. And so lastly, I see if you are willing to give your life to God, if you're willing to be ready, if you're willing to be ruthless, then you're going to be rewarded. And so flip over to Joshua in chapter number 24. Joshua chapter number 24, and this is the end of Joshua's life. Joshua has fulfilled his purpose that God wanted. Joshua has taken over the whole land of Canaan, and he has divided it amongst the children of Israel as Moses told him to, as the Lord would have. And he's given this portion of land to this tribe, and he's given this portion of land to this tribe, and he's given this to these people, and he's split up the inheritance of the land of Canaan. He's taken over the land of Canaan. He has fulfilled his purpose. And Joshua has come to the end of his life, and this is where we find ourselves, chapter 24 and verse number 25, and it says, "And it came to pass after these things that Joshua the son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died, being 110 years old. And they buried him in the border of his inheritance in Timnath-serah, which is in the Mount Ephraim, on the north side of the hill of Gosh. And Israel served the Lord all the days of Joshua, and all the days of the elders that overlived Joshua, and which had known all the works of the Lord that he had done for Israel." What a thought that is. Israel, the country that is known for murmuring, the country that is God's people, but they turn their back against God's people, and they turn their back on God to dance around some golden calf, and they turn their back against God over some petty things inside of Israel, the nation that God almost destroyed because of their pettiness, the nation that God almost wiped off the map because of their foolishness, because of their actions. God almost wiped them off the face of the earth. And here they are, it says there in verse number 31, "And Israel served the Lord all the days of Joshua." And it even says, even whenever the elders that outlived Joshua, whenever the elders that were with Joshua, even after his death, they still served God. Joshua made such an impact on the children of Israel that they served God. They didn't murmur, they didn't complain whenever Joshua wasn't ruling. All the days of Joshua, Israel served the Lord. What a thought that is, that Joshua had such an impact. Joshua was so close, and Joshua was so willing to serve the Lord that it made the entire nation follow after God. Joshua was such an inspiration to the children of Israel that even after his death, the elders that outlived Joshua served the Lord, and it caused the children of Israel to serve the Lord. What a thought that could be. What a great thing that could be, that you could get so close to God, you could get so willing to serve the Lord, that your church and the people around you don't stray away from God, and they don't sin, and they don't do bad things that they shouldn't. You can be such an inspiration to the people around you that the people around you end up serving God with all their heart, and they don't sin, and they don't falter, and they don't fail, because they look at you and you become an inspiration. Joshua served God so much that an entire country, an entire nation that had murmured and had complained against God for many, many years, and Joshua comes along, a young man comes along, somebody that was willing to serve the Lord, somebody that gave his all to serve God, and it changed the entire course of Israel. Because of Joshua's willingness to serve God, he was able to take over all of Canaan. He was able to push through and take over all of Canaan for the children of Israel. What a thought that something like that could happen in the church today. Something like that could happen with me and you today. You could get your willingness, you could get your heart and your body and your soul so longing after Christ, so longing after God, that the people around you begin to see that, and the people around you begin to feel the same way. Because of Joshua's willingness to do that, he was able to take over an entire country, the whole land of Canaan, and to take over armies that should have killed them, to taking over armies that should have destroyed the children of Israel, and he was able to prevail against them because of spending time with Moses and because of spending time with God in the temple the best he could. The Lord blessed him for it. The Lord blessed him in ways that he couldn't even imagine. It doesn't say that he gave Joshua as much land as he wanted, even though he did get a piece of it because he was a child of Israel. And we read it earlier that God would give him land that he trod on in certain pieces of the land, even though he did get his own inheritance. Because of Joshua's willingness, the entire country of Israel, the entire nation and people of Israel get the inheritance that God promised them. What a thought that could be, that because of your willingness, because of your desire for God, the people around you begin to feel their will for God's life. And the domino effect happens, and the people around them begin to see God work in their life. And the people around them begin to see God work in their life, and they say, I want a piece of that. And it all started just because you gave up everything you had for Christ. It's worth it. We can see it in Joshua's life that it's worth it to go all in for Christ. I'm sure if we could ask John and him being on that island and him be able to see all of heaven come down, and we ask him to say, John, was it worth it to serve Mary all that time? Was it worth it to stay in the house as Peter goes out and he preaches Pentecost? Was it worth it to stay in that house and to serve Jesus' mom and take care of her in her old age? Was it worth it to take care of her and be her handmaid? And John will say, yeah, it was worth it. I got to see something that nobody else that got to saw. I seen something that only the angels and only the people in heaven one day is going to get to see. I got to see far more than I deserve to. I got a big old piece of heaven. He said, I got so close to God that I got to see something that nobody else saw. And it's all because John was willing to sit there and serve in that house. It's all because he gave all he had to Christ. He spent the most time with Christ, and during the crucifixion, he was as close to Christ as he could be. John was always right there with Christ, and because he spent so much time with Christ, because he gave all he had for Christ, God gave him something so much more than he could have asked for in return. So that's what I want you to do. I want you to give your all for Christ, not for you, not because of what you might receive, but because of what the people around you can do. So that's what I want you to do. I'm gonna stand up here and pray. You know the deal. If you feel like God's dealing with your heart, if you truly want to make a commitment to God, then you come down here and you do so. Don't play games. Don't make a promise just to go back tonight and forget about it. Don't make a promise just to forget about it by the end of the day. I want you to think about your future. I want you to take into account the people around you and the lives that you could change. Make a commitment now. That's where it started. That's where it started with Joshua. He said, you know what? I want to get so close to God. I want to get so close to Moses that I end up doing something one day for God. So if you make that commitment now, if you give your life to Christ now, He can do far greater things with your life than you ever could. Don't waste your life away. Don't waste your life away on the things of this world. Don't give up. It's not worth it. I've stood up here and I've said it so many times. You got too much riding on the line. There's too much in this basket. There's too much at stake for you just to give up and waste your life away. You need to straighten up. It's time that we as Christians, it's time that you have looked at your future. You have looked at the things around you and you said, you know what? For the sake of the people around me and for the sake of the people that I love and for the sake of my life and for the sake of the lost people that I could reach, I'm giving my life to Christ. You need to think a lot greater than some foolish thing down here. You need to think a lot greater than some petty, temporary sin down here. You need to think a lot greater. You need to think straight. You don't have to be ignorant. You need to think statistically about this thing. The rewards are far greater. It's kind of like going to college. You go to college and you do this work and you're supposed to give your all in this work so that you can have a stable future, so that you can have stable finance ahead of your life. And this is college. This life is your college. You're giving everything you have so that you can get something in return for all of eternity. You're working for something far greater down here than you will ever receive on this earth. You're working for something beyond your own comprehension. You're working for something far beyond the reach of man. You're working for something only the Almighty God of heaven can